All right, welcome back. Hope you're having a good day. This tray is kind of getting so big and so awkward to carry. I just decided I'm going to update all three of these at once. This is a Campechy tree, and then I've got Ficus Microcarpa here, and then a little cutting here of another Ficus. To make a long story short, I was out of town for a little bit, and the person I had coming to water my trees, I actually was monitoring the weather, and I kept telling them that it was raining plenty and she didn't really need to come over and do any watering or anything. Turns out I kind of misestimated how much rain it was, and in all honesty, I mean, you know, it's no big deal. It's my own fault for just estimating that. I mean, had I been here, I probably would have went out and watered a couple times. But this tree and several others just kind of got some yellowing leaves on there that weren't there when I left, and kind of like a no harm no foul. It's just giving me a good excuse to clean this guy up. And honestly, before I even left, I thought about cutting this guy way back, just simply because it's time, and you know, the further away from the trunk that these branches get, the harder it is for it to kind of get the water and nutrients out there anyway. For sap to flow either way, it just becomes a lot more difficult for the tree to manage. So I'm going to do all of these at once. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to work on this guy here. Alright, and then, you know, this is among the list of things sometimes I wonder why I kept it to begin with. Of course, now it's got a halfway decent sized trunk to it. It's not, you know, that big of a deal. But when I first kept it, sometimes I wonder, what am I doing here? I'm hoping I can get this container to just kind of pluck up out of here, and I can get maybe a couple more months out of it, if not another year. I don't really want to have to repot it today. I don't really have the time. I got to get out there and cut some grass from being out of town for a week. But I'm just going to cut it way back and kind of pluck it up out of here, and hope I can just get that container. Like I said, it'll crumble apart some. It's time for that guy to kind of go away, but just trying to keep it together enough to rest back in here when I'm done here in an hour or two. Pretty sure I'm going to make a cascade out of it or something one day. And I just want to take out some shoots that probably would never be. See those yellowing, browning leaves there? Probably wouldn't be good for the long term design of it. Alright, now let's see if we can get it up out of here without letting it rest on another tree's soil like this. It definitely serves its purpose. Allows it to get the escape roots and just kind of grow a little more. It was a really small cutting at one point. And just give you an idea of just the size that cutting is now. When I took it, the whole thing was probably about the size of one of those branches there. Part of the reason I like to let it do this is so that it gets all this growth, but then also when it gets all this growth, it doesn't get so top heavy with the wind and everything, and it's rooted in here, which has been holding it pretty solid. So it's been serving its purpose pretty well. Let's see how much root growth this had in 11 months. All right. If my memory serves me right, last time it was one big root coming out of one of these holes. This time it seems to be a little more evenly distributed. Alright, and just look at this thing. I really do think this is a cool tree here. It is a native of Puerto Rico. Grows really well here in Florida. They don't seem to be super common. Maybe they're just not available that well, I don't really know. Up until like the last bald cypress I got, this was the most money I ever spent on a tree. If it didn't have the thorns, it would by far be my favorite. But the thorns just kind of throw me off a little every now and again. You can see some of these yellowing leaves, browned up leaves and everything. And so especially with those escape roots caught, I'm going to cut it way back. I have been trying to define an apex a little bit better. If you follow up the main trunk line here, comes up to a thick part here with some dead wood that would have been coming off that way. You probably see that when I give you guys a little bit of a closer look up here in a bit. But then that kind of follows up and comes up here. I want to leave enough growth up here for this to remain the apex. I want it to remain the strongest part of the tree. And you can see it goes from one branch into two, and then right at my last chop mark basically into four. And so I'm going to try to leave it four here and just cut off the super leggy parts. That part was actually coming down a little bit. Just really trying to come out like a node or two on each one of these branches to make sure there's a little life left there, so that they each just keep their own life. I got a good clump of growth all up in there. And you'll probably be able to see once I cut the bottom parts down that should remain the strongest part of the tree. But just to show you some of the growth habits of this tree anyway, this branch here just kind of turned its own way, crossed over all these other branches and came out this way. Here's where I chopped it the last time, probably trying to get it to grow out that way a little bit better. I'm just going to come out like one node from there and take that off. These here have been this one actually kind of directionally did what I wanted to do. And so I'm just going to come back one node up from the last chop. This is a new little sprout, the whole thing. I'll leave a couple nodes on that. And then this one too, just kind of a node or two off of the last chop. Actually, there's some sub branches there. I'm just going to come up with one node from that last chop. I do want to make sure that would be the lowest branch, unless that one's a little lower. They're actually almost bar branches, but I'm not going to worry about that at this time. Would like it to keep stretching that out a little bit. Show you guys the trunk when we get a chance to get a little close up here in a minute. Let's see, working our way around here. Here's where I chopped it the last time. Two nodes there. And so I'll just pop that off. Wish these two would grow away from each other a little bit. This is almost straight up growth right there. I think I might have left that last time. I'm going to take that off. Again, I don't want anything competing with the apex. And take this guy back to about right there. Alright, and with the camera off, snipped off a couple out of place branches. Probably barely even noticeable at this point, but just tried to clean it up just a little bit better after getting a better look on it. This way you guys can see the structure the best. but that trunk is leaning away from you here. Now the apex is coming back, so there could be a chance I do use this as a front one day. And the other side there, trying to keep it all in the picture. And of course this would be the way, leaning right at the viewer. But of course that kind of obstructs the trunk quite a bit, can't really see much of it. And speaking of the trunk, it is one of my favorite things about this plan, and so I'm just going to go ahead and give you guys a look at that before I start working on the ficus. Alright, and this is one of my favorite parts about the tree here. You can see where it's got like a live vein, and you can actually follow them up into some of the branches. That is the side that I was talking about I could use as the trunk if I could get the apex to kind of come back the other way, but then that is also the side that the trunk's the least interesting on. And just see if I can give you guys a look at that all the way around there. Alright, and then the last thing I'm going to do here, I cut all those roots off flush with the holes, and I am going to rest it back in this pot again. It's been in this pot for just about 2 years, so I'm thinking maybe another year or two, and then either try to get it in the next size bulb pan or into a nicer pot of some sort. I'm going to try to just take and kind of see if I can pull those roots up a little from the holes. And then there we go, and then just spin the pot some. And just make it to where the same roots don't go through the same holes again, clog it up or anything like that. Just kind of some gentle movement there should be just fine. Alright, and then last but definitely not least here, got this ficus here. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you may remember I had a bigger clump in here, and I put it in the pot this big because my intention was to just kind of let it go wild, keep it in this pot for a long time, let it get a ton of aerial roots, and then hope when I cleaned it up, it would just a cool looking banyan tree. And I noticed the middle part of it was rotting out, and I went to, and this was all long before I had the channel or anything like that, but I went to go, I'm just giving you guys a look at all sides. I went to go see what the problem was, and the middle just kind of, like I said, just kind of caused it to separate into two live parts. This one and then the other one, the other side was much smaller, just a very small tree compared to this one surviving here. And so just decided to, keep what I can, and I've left it in this pot ever since. I keep saying I'm going to repot it soon. Later on this summer, may or may not be the year. I'm not going to do it today, that's for sure. Today I'm just going to go ahead and clean it up some. Like I said, some of these inner leaves were yellowing just from being underwater for a few days. And so I'll just kind of take advantage of that time and just go ahead and clean it up some. I'm going to start on the upper half, try to give you guys a little bit of a better look. Several times one time I actually came through and just kind of hedge pruned the top, left everything on the bottom, and then there's also been several times that I've hedge pruned on the top and only defoliated at the bottom. I'm going to hedge prune at the top and then just kind of see what I've got at the bottom. I may or may not defoliate or get every growing tip. I'm thinking I'm leaning towards every growing tip. It is looking like a little leggy down here, but we'll just see when I get there. Right now I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Alright, I do intend to clean up that top a little bit better than that, but it's going to be a little easier to do once I kind of clean up the bottom some. Not just easier to do, but give me a little bit of a better idea of some of the twigs I may want to take out altogether once I can kind of see the whole thing. And I have decided to go ahead and get all the growing tips. Now when I say, like I got branches like that long here, when I say get all the growing tips, not just the tip, I'm going to go back probably, oh that's what she said too, right? But I'm going to go back probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 leaves and just kind of clip them off there, and then go ahead and defoliate what's left behind that. For the health of the tree, defoliating isn't necessary, and I do, you know, you do weaken a tree like this quite a bit, but obviously this tree has a ton of energy built up, and I'd never be able to see some of these inner leaves and everything unless I defoliated it completely. I don't know if you guys can even see, there's a little shoot there that's kind of unwanted. I'd never be able to see that unless I cleaned it up like I'm going to. And I'm just going to stop talking and get to work here. Alright, that's going to pretty much take care of the base for now. If you've been watching, on the other side, there was a couple of lower shoots that I was hanging on to. I was hoping it would kind of draw the trunk out some. Kind of really didn't. I mean, I think it's thick enough plenty down there to not have like inverse taper or anything like that. So I cut them off. I did leave this one because this one seems to be attached to its own little stump that kind of goes in there. And I think originally when this thing was clumped up all as one, that's what made it rotten out, was that it had a few of these neglected ones that just kind of died off, and then that rot kind of passed to the rest of the tree, if you will. So I did leave that one, but I cut these completely off. I'm going to go through, now that I can see the bottom a little bit better, I'm going to clean it from the bottom up a little bit, and then just go back up to the top and try to make sure I get most of those leaves off. Alright, and let's get one last look at it here. Try to get a couple looks from the sides too. Of course, hard to do that. And I think I have cut my grass for long enough. And I got to get out here and make that happen.